Here on Kiwi, it is 12 minutes past 8. Issues of the day now with T Radar joining us this morning. Morning, T Radar.
Good morning to you.
And first up, I know a lot of people are thinking about this morning because John Key, with his agreement with ACT, announced that there would be some kind of privatisation of schools. I don't think that's the terminology used, though, was it?
No, I don't think, no. What they call it is charter schooling, and essentially what happens is that you have a state school that's underperforming, from what I gather, and it can sort of be taken over by a private business or a church group or an iwi or some kind of a existing school, and they make funding, and they can have teachers that they pay on performance and all of that kind of thing. And of course, many people looking at this and thinking, wow, it's a sort of a backdoor way for some of these religious groups to get in there and claim some schools. I know there's been a lot of hubbub, a lot of murmuring about the likes of Destiny out there in South Auckland, on a lot of the school boards and things like that. So it'll be an interesting one to see. What would happen if a church group of some kind got to take over one of these state schools. They kept the funding and they went, yeah, evolution. Well, we're the only evolution we're really into is the evolution of the many forms of the Bible, and they sort of take that off the school's menu and become a little bit creationist.
Yeah, and what would let's say it wasn't a religious organisation buying into a school, let's say it was a business, because apparently it could be open to anyone. What would a business get out of buying into a school? A business is looking for a return, right?
Yeah, well, I guess if you get your your allocated amount of funding, and then you can pay teachers on the performance. And I don't think schools have got any sort of performance pay increase. But I guess if you slip in there the concept of national standards, if they sort of up the standards, then there may be some kind of financial incentive. I mean, I guess you could also argue, what a private companies get out of keeping people in prison. There is a profit to be made everywhere. So, I think they're fined if prisoners escape. So maybe it could be a similar thing with schools. Maybe it'll be a good thing. You get a private company taken over and making sure that everyone passes. But then I suspect, if they're going to be fined for having kids fail the system, there'd be an enormous amount of rorting going on.
Yeah, and definitely
rort central. Definite
incentive. Do you remember when you're taking School C and that kind of thing? Remember, no matter what score you got, it would then be changed. You'd have to fit somewhere on the bell curve for where they think
the bell curve.
People should pass and fail. I never understood it.
Yes. No, it was one of those things. And it's come out again even recently, this the last sort of week or so, they've had some of the exams for the NCEA and, teachers complaining that they're far too hard and, people coming up with stories of, scoring sort of in the 40% and being scaled up into the 70s. It was that whole scaling thing, I suppose. And
yeah.
I guess that the theory was that, even if you only scored 48%, but you still did better than 75% of other people, then really you probably scored 75%, because the exam has to be relative to all the other ones. But yeah, madness, the whole thing.
Madness indeed. One thing I noticed that wasn't in the election promises were pandas, and I'm sure John Key in the last term mentioned that he'd be quite keen on getting some pandas, and now I see that Edinburgh Zoo is getting some pandas. Where are ours?
I don't know where ours are, but wasn't it going to cost something like $1 million a year, I think, to keep the pandas? Because you've got to, feed them sort of very special things, and there's all kinds of sort of little clauses in the contract that you can have. But, they say there'll be a huge draw card, but I can only imagine, imagine being a panda and there you are, having a lovely life, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Thinking, I don't really understand anything. And I wouldn't have thought Edinburgh would have been a big region of bamboo growth.
No, apparently they have to import it.
Kind of place.
So there's the normal cost of you keeping them there with the zookeepers and everything, but then you also have to import the high quality bamboo from China.
Yes, it's a wonderful sort of export scheme by China. I think they sort of use it as a sort of a political thing to buy sort of favours, and it's very, very hard to get the pandas, obviously, but I don't imagine there'll be people out there protesting at the cost. I don't know whether it's being subsidised by anyone, but I don't imagine people will be taking to the streets and railing against the pandas, having all of this money spent on them when people themselves are in poverty and unemployed.
Well, that's right. But one thing I noticed in the whole reporting of this was, yay, pandas going to Edinburgh, yay. Well, there's nothing about the panda welfare. I mean, does the panda, as you just mentioned, waking up in Edinburgh, completely different environment. And not out there in the misty mountains where they were, their home. It seems rather tragic.
I I mean, I guess they sort of may have come from a zoo, so I'm sure they've got a very nice enclosure there. But yeah, well, I don't. To be honest, I don't really think pandas are very bright. I think they probably won't notice where they are, so long as the bamboo is coming regularly and they've got something to drink and somewhere to have a bit of a snooze. I don't think they really care.
Now, T. Radar, that's a gross generalisation. What gives you the idea that a panda might not be bright? What is it about them?
It's just the vibe of them, really, isn't it?
Right.
You just sort of look at them there, and like a grizzly bear, you get a sense that a grizzly bear's got a certain degree of sort of carnivorous intelligence, but a panda, sort of a bamboo shoot eating cuddly bear, you kind of think, who seems to have quite a lot of trouble breeding. Not the cleverest of snugglers.
Talking about grizzly bears, I was watching a documentary on the weekend by Werner Herzog, Cave of Forgotten Dreams, it was called. And it's about an old ancient cave that was discovered in the 90s in France. I forget the name of the cave, but inside the cave they found the oldest drawings ever, the cave drawings ever found anywhere in the world, 30,000 years ago. But underneath the drawings, so the drawings have been done on the cave wall, but on top of cave bear scratches from older than 30,000 years ago. And I was just thinking, wow, there were cave bears back then. And apparently, in modern times, we've never had cave bears. We've got grizzly bears and those sort of things, but not cave bears. But they were scratching on the wall more than 30,000 years ago. Yeah. There they are in the cave. Amazing.
What would you paint on the wall of your cave of Forgotten Dream?
That's a really good
we've
question.
Got one somewhere deep, dark down in the back of our sort of psyches.
I reckon it'd be a game of hangman or something,
Yeah.
Or tic-tac-toe.
or just sort of those lines that you have on the wall to symbolise how many days you've sat in the cave in the rain, like prison.
That's right.
And there'd be these etchings, and people would spend ages trying to figure them out, like some kind of rune stone. And really, what it was it's quite a cold February, and I'm stuck in my cave.
Exactly, indeed. Hey, talking about being stuck inside things, stuck inside a motel, and I know you've been thinking about motel ethics.
Yes, there's been a couple of surveys that have come out recently, and there was an interesting discussion I heard on the wireless yesterday of what it is okay to take from a hotel and what it isn't. And obviously, you can take your soap because they're hardly going to wrap the soap up and put it again. But then there was that ethical decision of if you've got the little thing of tissues and they've been opened, but there's a spare box. But apparently, take the spare box. That's theft. You see
the spare box
of tissues.
Oh, right. Is it?
Yes. Or to take an unopened roll of toilet paper.
Oh, I suppose that's true.
You haven't really used it, and the next person might want to use the toilet paper. So you take the toilet paper. It's like, I guess they're sort of equating it to the likes of taking things out of the your little mini bar and not paying for them.
Yeah. But who have you ever stuffed an unused toilet roll into your bag before you've
I just think maybe on the odd occasion, if you've got a bit of the flu or something like that, perhaps you do take it. But overseas, there've been reports of people taking basically everything out of the hotel room except the bed. There's furniture, and people take the curtains, the TVs, the plasma TVs these days.
Well, that is theft. Yeah, I mean, under no circumstances would that be okay.
And you'd hope then, if you were going to do that, you hadn't checked in under your own name.
Mm.
You'd want to have some kind of assumed name, and you'd check it and then disappear.
But there is that thing where people do collect stuff from hotels and motels, don't they? The soap's an obvious one, but also bathrobes.
The robes and various things. And but there's also quite a big thing on the internet at the moment of people who leave their hotel rooms decorated, and you can do quite an incredible job with your bed sheets. And there's been some wonderful photographs placed up, where you turn your bed sheets in the end of your bed and sort of use your pillows into sort of the gawping mouth of some kind of large monster. It's a lot of skill, a lot of dedication, obviously by people who spend far too much time trapped in hotel rooms, with only the basic sort of cable channels, a bit of the History Channel and maybe some Discovery, and you think, I really have to do something.
Yeah, and obviously...
I know. Monster out of my sheets.
Yeah, and obviously wasting that whole time between waking up and check out at 10 a.m. to leave these kind of things as well.
Yes. Well, there is that sort of uncomfortable period of time where you do sit there often thinking, well, I know I need to go, but I don't really want to go just yet.
Yeah.
What will I do?
What will I do with my luggage if I go now? You know, I have to haul this stuff around an extra hour if I leave at 9 rather than 10. Yeah.
You don't want to start watching a movie because it'll be guaranteed you'll start to become engrossed in it. You'll never see the end.
Yeah. That's all these things you need to think about. Yeah.
First world problems. Someone will be tweeting that later on.
That's right. Well, on those notes, T Radar, we thank you very much for your issues of the day. See you next week.